Okay, folks, welcome back to the Dynasty Fever YouTube channel. I'm Brian Floyd, here with you to talk about 2023 rookie running backs and sort of the tiers that I have them in at this point. Probably shouldn't be recording this late at night. I'm a little tired, but trying to get this out of the way and have one less thing to do tomorrow. I'm working with my two monitor setup here, so like what's projecting, I think, is different from like what I'm seeing in front of me. So because it's my notes, so we'll maybe have a couple hiccups here. But let's get going. So as you can see here, these are as of now, terms and conditions apply. They are subject to change. I don't know that they'll change substantially before the draft, which, gosh, is still 4 weeks away. But this is where I'm at now after digesting a lot and looking at these guys a lot. So just a couple thoughts overall on sort of the rookie process and how I rank rookies and that sort of thing. I am very squarely in the middle of the film and analytics spectrum, if you will. I think both play a big part. I think you have to paint like a whole picture. Yep, there's the yawn. And so, when it comes to film, I'm not an expert film watcher. By no means am I there. Maybe I never will be, but certainly not yet. So I do watch film. I go into the film rooms on these websites and I look at stuff, but I also check in with people I trust who I know are more expert and have more experience as film watchers. And what do they say? And sometimes I even watch the film watchers watch film and sort of compare notes and that sort of thing. So I'm not somebody who says, "Oh, I don't want to see anybody else's take." Oh, whatever. I want it all. I want it all. When it comes to analytics, I certainly don't have the time and experience with plot charts and that sort of thing, and all this data gathering and amassing. But I take a look at analytical profiles, and I think those things play a role, both when we're looking at certain thresholds that we want prospects to reach, as well as things that are more predictive and I shouldn't say more predictive, but things that are a little more nuanced, and I'll be getting into that in a little bit. So I also factor in when I'm doing this stuff, what their expected draft capital is. I know a lot of people don't. It's just sort of a pure eval of the players. But for me, that's not really what I'm trying to do here. I'm taking the eval of the prospects and looking at how they're going to translate to the NFL and eventually how they're going to translate to fantasy, because that's kind of my job. Not really my job. Like, it's my role as a content creator and also as someone who needs to know and have these folks on my fantasy teams producing. So I am a compiler. I do tons of research and just compile lots of info, my own film stuff, other film people, analytical profiles. I watch YouTube videos, I listen to the podcasts, I'm in group chats, I'm in the Discords, like talking to people. I do podcasts with guests, right? And essentially I just kind of like aggregate this entire picture and sort of spit out where I have these guys. And so in some ways I kind of look at this as Rookiepedia, if you will, right? Like if you go to a Wikipedia article, and you read stuff, you're getting the summary of it, you're getting really good information. When you scroll down to the bottom, though, you see like some footnotes and things like that of some other sources, primary sources, secondary sources, other tertiary sources, right? And sort of where that research comes from, right? That person sort of cites the research from the article that they're writing. And as someone who has a background in history and writing about history and also writing academically, I this is kind of fitting because I think I'm kind of Rookiepedia. I soak in all this stuff, right? And I spit out a story. And myself is in that story in the way that I write it, you know, and in some of my own original research, but I'm also citing other sources, right? I'm also pulling in things from all over the place. And I think that's, for me personally, that's just good process. There may be a time later on down the road when I'm, you know, some expert film watcher and that, you know, I tune out everybody else and that's the first thing I go to. I don't know, but for right now, this is where I'm at. And so you are benefiting from all that time that I spend researching and talking to people, and all that money I spend on Patreons and you know, that sort of thing, right? So and that's where the rookie rankings come in. If you want to see the full set of rookie rankings, my Superflex rookie rankings are available at goingfor2.com, and I, you know, update them as much as possible so that it's a reflection of kind of where I'm at the moment. For me, when it comes to these prospects, every prospect is a mosaic. You know, to borrow another art metaphor, you're painting a picture on a prospect, right? Context matters, nuance matters. You know, you can say, you know, no running back with this BMI and you know, whatever, this receiving market share has ever blah 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 blah, or yeah, sure, but then there's also this other bits of information, right? And so we kind of, for me personally, I kind of pull it together, paint that picture, create that mosaic, right? Put that whole collage together, all sorts of art metaphors. Ironically enough, I'm not very good at making art. And then, you know, I kind of come out with where I rank these guys. But so when you look at these rankings, both, you know, in this video and on goingfor2.com, what is it that you're seeing? What do they mean? For me, it's a blend, as I said, of player eval, expected draft capital in real life, the value or cost that these guys are going at, and you know, all that sort of translating it into fantasy football for me, and you know, for you watching and listening to and reading content that I produce, right? So I'm ranking fantasy football stuff, not necessarily ranking NFL prospects. And in that process of translating things into fantasy production, I do weigh in things like, you know, cost and value, and, you know, whether guys are going too high and too low, and that sort of thing, or, you know, guys I'm more willing to take a risk on and guys I'm less willing to take a risk on. And you'll see a little bit of that in these rankings coming up. I'm gonna put in the video description for you links to a lot of the stuff, film analytics, etc., that I've been getting into, you know, and highlighting some folks who I think are really good at what they do, and also some sources where you can find some film to look for yourself. So what are my overall impressions of the 2023 rookie running back class? It's a solid class. It's a deep class, right? But its depth is specific. Its depth comes in the fact that, you know, I can go whatever 10, 11 RBs deep in this class and still be fairly confident that you know, I'm getting an RB2, you know, maybe high-end RB3 producer, right? You know, frequent flyer in my flex positions in my lineups, right? This is, you know, and that to me represents a really good class when I'm that excited, when it goes that deep, you know, and I'm looking at guys 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in rankings and saying, okay, this guy's got a shot to contribute to an NFL roster. This guy could be a good depth piece in a 0 RB world, et cetera. You know, that makes a good class. I think too many people run away with the fact of like, oh, well, you know, there's too few people that I want to trade up for in the 2023 class, you know, and you can't judge a class only by its top end, right? You have to judge it really as a whole. And I think holistically speaking, this is a deep 2023 class. And I think it's highlighted by a deep running back class. So you have to have your expectations and know who you're drafting, right? When you're drafting, say Zach Charbonnet late first, you're drafting, I think, a guy who will settle into, I don't know, RB 14, 16 to like 22-ish, year in, year out, something like that for a couple of years. That's what you're getting, and that's really good. People say, oh, well, I got this person at this pick and this person at this pick in this other class, and all that is with hindsight, right? So, keep that in mind as well. When people were drafting Justin Jefferson at 109 in, what was that, 2020, they weren't expecting the Justin Jefferson for the most part that we got, right? So, right, keep in mind, proper expectations. So how should you approach running backs in this rookie draft season? Well, I think in general, with all drafts, really, startup or rookie drafts, for the most part, I tend to be best player available, or maybe what's more accurately called best value available. And to be water, don't go in with too much of a strict strategy. Be able to adapt to how things unfold. Always seek value. I think in rookie drafts, since it's like our only source of like new blood coming in, it's people rush to sort of, I think overdraft for team need rather than drafting for value. So I think draft for value and then, figure out need a little bit later on. There are different approaches to drafting running backs in rookie drafts. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind, though, is sort of the zero RB NFL, right? In some ways, the zero RB, fantasy folks were, a little bit ahead of the curve on what the NFL has become, and I think we have to adapt to what the NFL has become, right? And so, what does that mean? That means, in some sense, at some point in the year, as the Dynasty Rewind guys like to say, we're all playing zero RB. So we need running back depth, right? It's therefore better to draft a couple, backup running backs, committee backs that have upside if there's an injury or, if their role increases or something like that, right? Than it is, a sixth and seventh wide receiver on your team. The tricky part with that, though, is as things stand now, the running backs in 2023 are kind of clumped together in the second round for the most part. And so, the idea of, pounding running backs later on, third, fourth round, because, the wide receivers available then don't really mean much for you, even if they're like a better prospect than the running back you're getting at that point. That's going to be a little tricky because right now, it looks like from, the early second to the late second, there's anywhere in that range, there's like 5 or 6 running backs who are going. And then really in the third and fourth round, it's the tight ends and some of like the, next tier down wide receivers, like your Rashee Rices and your Cedric Tillmans and your Xavier Hutchinsons and Parker Washingtons and Tyler Scott and, those kinds of guys. And so that idea of, oh, I'm not going to take wide receivers that late, I take running backs that late. Well, who you're getting then is your Eric Grays, your Kenny McIntoshes, your Dwayne McBrides and things like that. And I don't know that that's all that good, right? I mean, they're probably better than, taking, I don't know, Puka Nacua or Jonathan Mingo, as much as I am high on those guys. But, when it comes to your roster construction and what the value will be in the trade market, when a running back is an injury away, an injury happens, that running back has more value than Jonathan Mingo will have, right? So it's tricky. There's nothing really straightforward about it. There's some people who are just like, listen, I don't really draft running backs, and there's some people who are like, I have to draft running backs. I can trade for wide receivers. So, the NFL draft is going to tell us a lot as far as differentiating some of where these running backs are clumped together. So things will look a little different in about a month, and maybe we'll get a little bit more clarity as to where the approach, what the approach is going to be. But for now, expect a lot of those running backs to go in the second round, and plan accordingly, whatever that means for you. So let's get into it, right? I don't know that we need to talk too much about the only guy in tier one, and that's Bijan Robinson. We've seen words like elite and generational get thrown around. I think, as Matt Hicks points out, you have to think of him not just as a running back, but as an offensive weapon. He's a very good route runner and pass catcher, and in some ways not a very good route runner and pass catcher, comma, for a running back. Just purely, he's a good route runner and a good pass catcher. And so you're going to be able to line him up all over the field, and do all sorts of things with him. And I think, you have to think of him as an offensive weapon. Also, I mean, you do have to think of him as a running back when it comes to like the age curve and things like that in Dynasty. But, when you're thinking about ways that he can produce and hit floor and ceiling, and when you're looking at the NFL touches that he's going to be able to get, and really when NFL teams have to think of him in the draft, it's, as a weapon. This is a high end workhorse running back in a league that is increasingly using committees, and so therefore is a dying breed. And as much as running back is running back when it comes to dynasty, right? The high end workhorses like this become that much more valuable, especially relative to the rest of the running backs. And he's just so good at like everything, right? I mean, the lateral agility is just exquisite. It's masterful. If you did want to, knock him here or there, it would be on, sometimes he can be hesitant in making decisions, and his pass pro is average even for a running back prospect at times. So, but these are minor points. And I think when I look at his analytical profile, lots of greens, right, across the board. So I'm going to, be grading each running back, sort of just summarizing their analytics in one grade. And for me, he's definitely an A-level prospect. His relative athletic score, 9.81. I'm going to put a link to the relative athletic score site in the descriptions as well. And then I'm going to do in the yellow here some comps that people have for these prospects. And, some of these are play style comps. Some of these are like, ceiling comps. Some of these are, similar profiles coming out of college comps, et cetera, right? Some of them are like fantasy comps, right? So depending on who's giving you the comp, but as you can see there, he's in very, very good company. Edgerrin James and LaDainian Tomlinson and Marshawn Lynch, and what Frank Gore could have been if he didn't blow his knees, which is what Matt Waldman says about Bijan. Statistically coming out of college, comparing to Zeke and Brees and Najee at relatively similar sizes and that sort of thing. So you're looking at just the easy 101 in all formats. I guess I could make the case that in certain super flex leagues, you're going to see a quarterback go 101, but it's Bijan's world, and we're just living in it. So we don't need to talk about him too much. I think the interesting conversation starts really after Bijan, and where do we go from there? And for me, there are really only two of the running backs that I'm considering taking in the first round of rookie drafts, and that's Zach Charbonnet and Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think, unlike a lot of people, I've come to have Charbonnet at RB2 and Gibbs at RB3. And really, for me, it's about Zach Charbonnet being a safer, well-rounded, more versatile, more likely to have the 3-down profile running back than Gibbs. Gibbs is electric for sure. He's got ceiling in the right offense, which is an important qualifier. But for me, if I'm sitting there at 107, 108, right, I like Charbonnet better. Are there going to be drafts where I take Gibbs instead because he's the higher valued player in the market? Yes. And so, it's not a strict how I would draft them sort of rankings, but I feel safer with Sharp than I do with Gibbs. When it comes to the analytics, you might ding Charb on his age. His year 2 production certainly hurts his profile. His yards per carry is just below 6 at 5.9. This guy sounds like a lock for a day 2 NFL pick, maybe even round 2 NFL. As I said, I might take Gibbs ahead of him in some drafts just because of what the market is, just because I want to diversify my portfolio, et cetera. But I feel safe with him in the, after 106-ish in rookie drafts. And, with Gibbs, listen, it's not this binary switch where like you don't hit 200 pounds or you don't hit 205 pounds. So I throw you out, right? It's in context, right? Like, running backs of that size have not been productive in fantasy football, period, right? Of the last 3 years in particular, and I got this from John Laub, the top 24 running backs of the last 3 years, so 72 entries, right, in the system, if you will, only 3 of them were, I think, below 200 or below 205, right? So it's important that we realize what the NFL does with running backs this size, how they use them, and what kind of chances they'll get to produce. Now, there's different wrinkles to that, right? I mean, you could say, well, bigger running backs get more opportunity because they're drafted earlier, and so therefore that skews the numbers. And you could also say not too many running backs of Gibbs size are going to get the draft capital that we expect Gibbs to get with that high receiving share. Like Bijan, the route running and receiving is good, but not just good, for a running back, right? So, definitely there's a chance for Gibbs to have the higher ceiling and outproduce Charbs over time. But I think it's got to come in the right situation, right? Like, say Jahmyr Gibbs went, I don't know, to the Eagles, right? It's not very good. You don't want him with a mobile quarterback. If he went to like a super crowded running back, you have to worry about his usage even more. I think, he's, as much as he's really, really good, I think he's more landing spot dependent than some of these other running backs. But it's a bet that a lot of us are willing to make because he's special. But even when you look at a guy like, James Cook last year, who, Gibbs is better than for sure. If guys of that profile were gonna have heavy touches and, be clear lead backs, even 1As, would Buffalo have signed Damian Harris? And would people still be saying that Buffalo might add yet another running back, right? So something to keep in mind when we're looking at, where Gibbs goes and the type of touches he'll get, which is what scores us points. And then there's this whole big ass tier that's just kind of clumped together that I'm just saying, hey, listen, the NFL is going to tell us, right? Draft capital and landing spot are going to tell us what to do with these guys. It's going to differentiate, among them, where they might be clumped together right now between, I don't know, 203 and 209 or something like that, right? There might be some movement one way or the other. I think more likely more of them a little bit further down, but we'll see. I think a lot of them will stay in that mid-second. So if I was going to change anything here, it would be to flip Tank and Tucker, right, and keep Spears 5, because for me it's more of like I feel safe with Tank as sort of an underrated and overhated. I think people are kind of down on him, a little fatigue with him. I think he's a fallen Debbie Darling. I think people were excited after the freshman year, and then the letdown of the overall production, which is what goes into his analytics grade. I think And people are kind of forgetting that really he kind of has low key a workhorse upside. He's got some receiving chops. He's got some variety to the types of runs that he can excel at. He's above average with things like speed and agility, but not like through the roof with any of them. He's got again, good power, but not like through the roof with it. There are questions with him, just like any other running back, when it comes to some of like the decision making that he was doing, especially when it comes to like when to elude a guy versus when to take on contact. But also, you have to realize that he was making the best out of a really bad situation in Auburn, and I think he deserves credit for that. And you can see some comps for him there, of Jacobs and Pollard and B-Rob with hands and DeMarco Murray and things like that. Tyjae Spears is my guy. I love him. There are things to watch out for sure, right? I mean, the at least one ACL, perhaps two. He's coming from a group of 5 school, and the hit rate is not good. He is a senior as well. If you listen to the last episode of Fever, I give a lot more context to that sort of stuff. But it has to be kept in mind, even when you're looking at a good production profile and a good analytics profile, and I give him a fairly good grade here. At the same time, that's in the context of he's producing in the group of 5, right? He did, do very well against a Power 5 school in the Cotton Bowl, but context matters, right? And his overall portfolio of production is coming in the AAC, so it's worth keeping in mind. Also, just the RAS score has an asterisk because it's a pro day RAS score, so just to keep that in mind. And he weighed in at 204 at the combine. He's already, at the Senior Bowl, and I think maintained that around at the combine. But I think he's already down to 201 at the pro day, I think. So, that's something that's not a good sign, right? When we think about the role that weight has played that we've talked about before. I think he can be a 1A in the way that Pollard can be a 1A. I think he can be a 18 to 20 touch per game guy in the way that Pollard can, where some of those touches are in space, where some of those touches are definitely pass catching, that sort of thing. But I think he's got very good upside. I think he's probably got a little less room to grow than the next guy on the list, and that's Sean Tucker, much to the chagrin of my co-host Jesse Schneeman, who's a big Tucker guy. Tucker for me is raw and inconsistent. I think his size and strength are not really all that different from Tyjae Spears. So if we're gonna, ding size and strength for Spears, we're gonna ding it for Tucker. And this idea that Tucker is this like, guaranteed 3-down profile. He's essentially the same size as Spears and just maybe a few pounds heavier, especially with the lower 201 weight. For Spears, but he's really fast. He's got good athleticism. He's got good agility, burst. He hits a lot of production things that you want to see in the analytic profile. If his numbers from his home video workout that he had were taken as real, his RAS would be 9.75. We're taking those numbers with a grain of salt, so we have to take that RAS with a grain of salt. Is there a world in which Sean Tucker, out of Charbs, Gibbs, Tank, Spears, and Tucker, has the best career and the most productive in fantasy? Absolutely. These guys are clumped close together. It's just a matter of, if I'm ranking within this tier, that's where I'm putting Tucker, based on the what I perceive as a shaky floor, and not as confident in him as I am in the guys above him. And you'll see there, I think Doug Martin, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Miles Sanders, these are all good backs that and Dalvin Cook certainly more of a ceiling comp, but that's there. for Sean Tucker in the right situation. The next two guys, Zach Evans and Kendre Miller. Zach Evans, a lot of people have been down on. It's kind of cool to hate Zach Evans now. You know, the thing, so one of the reasons why Tucker got a little dinged in the analytic profile and why he's like sixth, right, is that his career yards per carry were only 5.4. His rushing yards over expectation, and rushing yards over expectations per attempt were not hitting a lot of the thresholds we like to see. He's slipping, as we hear in NFL draft boards, although, as you know, if you listen to the podcast, Jesse thinks that's a media conspiracy and poo-poos all over it, et cetera, right? So then when we look at Evans, so why is he getting dinged? There are somewhat similar concerns in that some of his decision making and vision is in question, and his overall production is in question because he lost reps in both places. But he also, unlike Tucker, does not have anywhere near the receiving profile that we like to see. He also weighed in at 202 at the combine, which is well below what we wanted to see and what people thought he was. He's probably a third or fourth rounder in the NFL right now. He's mid-second in mocks. He's as bursty and explosive and as good a runner as almost anybody in the class, really. I think he's underrated when it comes to his agility and elusiveness. I think he does it with more subtle movements that are not as visible as on film as like a Madden juke. But there are questions with him. There are uncertainties with him, right? He hasn't done testing. There's the whole recruiting saga. Was he putting in the effort? Why did he lose snaps to, Kendre Miller and then Quinshon Judkins at the other, destination at Ole Miss? I mean, those are really good backs, right? So I don't know. These are things to keep in mind, and I think that's why Evans slides in at 7 behind those other guys, right ahead of Kendre Miller, who is a somewhat similar back in that he's explosive. I think his agility is a little more visible, and I think it's a little more of a standout trait for him. But the ratio of his strength power to his size is disappointing at times. He's listed as at 215, 216, right, which is well above Evans. And it's a good weight that we like to see for an NFL back. But I don't know. I don't see that power. It doesn't translate. One example I keep bringing up is him getting stuffed, near the goal line twice in the Big 12 championship against Kansas State. So I don't think he's playing up to his size, and that's not a great sign. And you also mix in that he similarly doesn't have the overall receiving profile that we like to see. I think his production growth rate, was a little bit off of what people like to see. Right now he's projected as a round 4 NFL pick. I could see him in the 3rd round, because there are people who love Kendre Miller, and I could see him, in the late 4th in the 5th round, right? Because that's the way RB is these days in the NFL. So right now he's like a mid to late 2nd in the mocks. He's pretty much going out of the 5 here on your screen. He's usually going last out of the 5, right? But all these guys solidly in the 2nd round in rookie mocks. And I think, until the NFL tells us what they think, we just, have to kind of hold them here and then see what we do with them after the draft. This next tier, tier 4A, is what I call the if things break right, sort of an optimistic way of looking at it, but also the sort of proceed with caution. These are backs who definitely have upside and definitely have things to like, but are definitely flawed and definitely behind, for me, the previous tiers that we've seen. Izzy Abanikanda is my guy. I really like him. I have him really neck and neck with Roschon. I think what stands out to separate Izzy from Roshan is I think he's just more explosive, but also he's got room to grow, and he's doing that at 20 years old. Whereas Roshan, who's new to the position because he came into college as a quarterback and also has room to grow, is doing so already at 22. So that's something to keep in mind when we're looking at running back in Dynasty. I think some of Izzy's vision, footwork, agility, he needs refinement, right? He's raw and he's inconsistent. We also need to see the full, testing and drills at the pro day. I don't think the Pitt pro day happened yet. If it did, I apologize, and I just haven't filled in that information. His draft capital, though, could vary widely, and that's one of the reasons that I ding him in the analytic grade, is because he could be a fourth rounder. I've seen him high as third or fourth. I've also seen him as low as sixth, right? So it all depends on what the NFL thinks of him. Right now, he's like late second to mid third in mocks. I think for Roshan, the dings that he gets is obviously the overall production because he was, a backup for so long. The age, the career yards per carry of 5.6. If he got day two capital, which doesn't seem likely, that would elevate him where I'd feel more confidently taking him in the early second. People, the word on the street is that the NFL does like Roshan as a prospect. So if he went late day two, then I would feel more confident about taking him where some people are taking him in rookie mocks now, which is early second. Otherwise, believers will probably get him before me because I see him more as like a late second, early third. Next guy, Devon Achane, is one of those guys where I'm just like, I'm out at cost, right? And it's mainly the size thing. And what the role will be, what the touches will be. He'll be on a pitch count, I think, in the NFL. So like Gibbs, but like 10 pounds smaller, right? And I believe 1 inch shorter, right? So I think this is buyer beware. If he doesn't get day two draft capital, I might have 0 Achane or, 1 or 2 here or there, as like a what if I'm wrong or diversify or, trade him to a believer or that sort of thing. Because he's going early second now in mocks, and it's too high for me, based on what we know how the NFL uses guys like this. Listen, he's dynamic, right? And he can make the most of touches, and there's a world in which he goes to a team and has a defined role and does that role really well, but I just don't see that as much fantasy upside from either a floor or ceiling perspective. And as fast as he was, 4.32 40, with the size and everything, it translates to, a 6.84 RAS, right? All right. This next tier I'm calling middling mid-round mids, right? So these are just, middling prospects that are going to go in like the fourth, fifth, maybe even sixth round at this point in the NFL draft. I'm taking them in the third and early fourth in rookie mocks. Not too worried about these guys as far as wanting to have a lot of shares, but at the same time, in a 0 RB world, right, when it comes down to like the third and fourth round, I lean these guys before I lean, a middling wide receiver who may have a little bit better draft capital, like say, I don't know, a Parker Hutchinson or a Tyler Scott, right? So Eric Gray is, sort of a smooth, well-rounded running back, not going to set the world on fire, but, has good receiving chops, and could have a solid role in the NFL. I think he's a value. I think he's fairly underrated. Chase Brown's very interesting, right? Super athletic, not strong at all. He got ragdolled in pass pro at the Senior Bowl. But, he's someone who, when I look at who's on the screen now, if there's like a ceiling play here, it's Chase Brown. right? And if an NFL team really likes him, it takes him, third round, maybe mid fourth, I'm paying attention, and especially if it's a really good landing spot. He's a fifth year player. He certainly has you know, some flaws on tape. But when you're talking about a third round dart throw, that's a guy to throw a dart on. In a lot of situations. Kenny McIntosh, almost zero production until very late in the career, and there's context to that, right? Because he's at Georgia and they have a big stable of backs. And so, there's context to that analytic grade of C minus C. But really the athleticism just, isn't there. You know, you can see the RAS there from the pro day is a 4.01, which is just really bad. He ran over a 4.6 40, which, even at his size, which is a good size, is not very good, and really knocks him down as a prospect. When you plug that 40 into the other things in analytical profiles, like a weight adjusted speed score, and things like that. Even his receiving shares, were only okay in year 3 and weren't really good until year 4. I don't see much for McIntosh. I see him as a bench piece that will occasionally, be a flex guy. Dwayne McBride is interesting. There are a lot of McBride believers. He just has basically a 0 receiving profile. I think he has a 1.7% career receiving share in college, and that's unheard of small. And so certainly limits the type of role that he'll have in the NFL, and therefore limits, the type of production he can give us fantasy. You're also adding into that he's coming from the group of 5, that even for his size doesn't have, great speed. Like his expected speed score is not very good. We haven't seen the full testing and drills on that, but he's a powerful bursty runner. He could probably have some impact here or there. He's going to have a week where, I don't know, because there's an injury or because a team finds itself in the short area, inside the 5 a couple times, he's going to have I don't know, 47 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you're going to be glad that you plugged him into the flex on a bye week, right? I mean, that's really what you're buying with Dwayne McBride, if you're even buying that, really. I jokingly put a headline in the article that I wrote about him: is he, quote unquote, this year's Dameon Pierce? Because we're always looking for the this year's that, and the next that, who's the next Pacheco, and that sort of thing. Dwayne McBride is probably going to get a 5th round ish, 6th round draft capital. So even less draft capital than Pierce, who I didn't like much coming out of college. He's coming from a worse school with even less receiving. It's not, but it's in the whole, you never know, might as well throw a dart. Sure. Yeah. 0 RB world. Sure. Yeah. Throw a dart on him rather than, I don't know, Dontavian Wicks, right? Sure, go for Dwayne McBride. Not really going to talk too much about these next few folks. This is what I'm calling could be sneaky, tiers 5A and 5B. These are guys that are sort of on the periphery of relevant, but in the right situation, could contribute and be along the lines of what I described for McBride, or a little more. Hull's probably got the best chance because his game is well-rounded, and he's not as small as Deuce Vaughn. He's a combine darling, but even then, his draft capital projection is still in the 5th or 6th round. His career yards per carry was only 5 flat, which is not good. He's not very strong, goes down on contact a lot, has a good athletic score, He'll find some kind of role contributing, receiving a little bit on the NFL and in the NFL and that sort of thing. But probably not going to do much. Rodriguez is I don't want to say the opposite of that, but he's kind of like a Dwayne McBride, right? He's got size and power, but like zero receiving chops, and also is a senior. And his analytic profile didn't turn out good. We haven't seen the full battery of testing and drills. He only did the bench press at the combine. But there's some folks who say, hey, of the lower ranked guys, who's got a shot? It's Rodriguez. And then there's Little Deuce Vaughn. Was that Beach Boys song, Little Deuce Coupe, right? Little Deuce Vaughn, right? So let me put it this way. For what Deuce Vaughn's going to be asked to do in the NFL, I think he can probably do it really well. He's very quick and agile. He's got very good vision. He's got good receiving chops. But he's like 5'5", 179 or something like that. So like A-Chain was 10 pounds less than Gibbs. Well, now Vaughn's 10 pounds less than A-Chain. I don't think it's gonna turn out all that well for Vaughn. As far as what role he's gonna have in the NFL. He'll do it well, but it's not gonna be a big one at all. Like his ceiling is he carves out like a Darren Sproles career for himself, and is occasionally useful in fantasy. Could be wrong. He's electric, right? So Matt Waldman says that he doesn't compare him to CMC as far as like overall, but the way that he moves and how smart he moves, right? And he has movements like the movements of bigger elite backs, just in a smaller package. So somebody to keep an eye on, 4th round, sure, throw a dart at Deuce Vaughn, right? He could be fun. And then last to round it out, there is the Xavier Valladay. There's really not too much to say about Valladay. He was productive in both Wyoming and Arizona State, but it's Wyoming and Arizona State. He's got a good receiving profile. He's not super athletic or fast. He's like, I think, going to be 25 soon after the draft, like early in the NFL season. There's not a whole lot, to say good about his analytics. But what stood out to me is in an NFL that likes committees and likes pass catching backs, and in Dynasty that's PPR, when someone from the Dynasty Nerds, I forget the name, described him as a poor man's Etienne, then that's a guy I'll throw a dart on in the 4th round, if I'm choosing among guys to throw darts on, right? There are some other guys that people will have ranked higher than some of these guys on this last tier that we're really going to talk about. But those are the top 20 backs split into tiers. Other names that to watch that you may hear, day 3 of the NFL draft, they're broken up into tiers 6, 7, and 8. Not too much to say about really any of these guys. I mean, Tavion Thomas is probably intriguing for me. He's a big guy, and could have like that 47 yards and a touchdown game that I was talking about for McBride. I could see Tavion Thomas, balling his way through doing that. Mo Ibrahim, size and age and the ACL, or was it Achilles? I forget. Anyway, super productive though when he was on the field. So certainly, would not be surprised if I, get a sleeper alert that Mo Ibrahim, had 2 touchdowns both from the 0.5 yard. Other guys, Deneric Prince had a really good RAS, but there's not much to like about his game. Some of those deeper cuts are interesting. Some of them are really good stories too. Some of them are former 5 stars. Some of them have really good athletic profiles. Some of them are super productive. Some of them, trying to remember which one it is. I want to say it's Kalan Laborn, Kalan Laborn, or is it Christian Beal Smith? There's one of them in there that had like injury, transfer, possession of marijuana, like just a real fun story, you know. But you know, was good and flashed on the field. I also like Toa Tawa of Nevada, really good size. Was, you know, pretty productive for my C2C, for the college side of my C2C team. And you know, he's all tatted up, which I think might be related to a cultural thing, a Polynesian cultural thing. And but either way, like just the type of guy that, like, you know, like to root for. All right, so that's about it as far as the running back tiers go. Um, again, I'm speaking for myself and not for Jesse. These are not official Dynasty Fever opinions, but that's just sort of where I'm at after, you know, months, several months of diving in to these rookie running backs. You can catch us audio only on Thursdays. That's where you can follow me and the show on Twitter. Please make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel, give a thumbs up, give a comment. That'd be great. I'm going to try to use the YouTube channel a little bit more moving forward. And so we're gonna want those subs to increase, and you know, we got some good stuff on here, some outtakes um, and short clips, you know, that are sort of samples of what you get on the podcast. There's another long form video I did on Anthony Richardson. A couple rapid reacts that I did. So yeah, gonna be kind of pumping up the YouTube presence a little bit, you know, as time allows, and hopefully you can be a part of it. So as always, that's a wrap, and thanks for watching.